Hello, my fellow Hulk fans. It's Jerry Raska with you, and boy, have we got a doozy to look at today. Today's episode, we are looking at Tales to Astonish number 66, featuring stories of the Giant Man and Wasp and the Incredible Hulk. This series, we focus on the Incredible Hulk, so that's what we're going to be looking at. And it's interesting. We've got another new addition to the art team for this issue, somebody we have not seen before that we're going to be looking at and talking about. And then just, again, the ongoing story and where things are going with the Hulk. So for all of you who are new, thank you for dialing in and checking out this video. I hope you enjoy yourself throughout the course of the video. And I hope that you think about subscribing to the channel. So our goal here is to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And we're making great progress thanks to all of you. Don't forget, just hitting subscribe on the video, on the channel. It costs you nothing to do, but will put you in the running to win some original artwork. So we have one winner will win this X-Men piece that I did featuring the original X-Men in their original costumes. This is to celebrate the X-Men series that we've just kicked off. And then we have, of course, the Incredible Hulk to celebrate this series right here, where we're looking through all of the awesome Hulk issues throughout history. And so we've got a Hulk piece. And then, of course, the Amazing Spider-Man. And to be qualified to win these, all you have to do is be a subscriber when we hit the 1,000 subscriber mark. So just by clicking that button for free, you can win free artwork. There's no purchase necessary. Mailing is free. All of that just by clicking the button. So please consider doing that and joining us here on the channel and the community that we're building. So there we go. There's my spiel. Thanks so much for everybody for your help. And let's cut over to the comic and let's dig in. So this is the cover for Tales to Astonish number 66. As always, it is a flip book, or not so much a flip book, but a two stories in one book. So sort of an anthology book. The idea here is Tales to Astonish gives characters that maybe don't have the popularity or sales yet to carry their own title. But obviously Marvel feels very strongly about the character and wants to keep him around. It's also a place where you can try out new talent. So more so on the Giant Man and the Wasp stories, I've just kind of looked. We don't review them, but the art team continually changes with these stories. So again, maybe somebody who Marvel wants to give them a tryout, see what they can do. They give them, scripts from a book like Tales to Astonish. So this is a Jack Kirby cover, and in this case, the Hulk is a little squished here. Sometimes the Giant Man and the Wasp are the, main focus, or their first story, so they get the majority of the cover work, and then the Hulk below. And of course, Giant Man is a giant, so usually needs more space. This cover, with the weird stuff going on, maybe they could have given the Hulk a little more room, but even so, it's still a fun enough cover. Anytime you get to see Jack Kirby kind of going nuts with the Hulk is always fun. His Hulk does change around quite a bit from time to time. So this Hulk looks a little, other than his eyes being a little wonky, he looks much more human than what we see sometimes. But overall, it's a pretty decent Hulk. I like the bright green coloring on the cover, so I'd say it's okay. There's nothing fantastic about the cover, nothing to write home about, but not bad. As I always tell you, this is a scanned PDF copy of the comic, and that's why you see all these old ads. You're going to see the printing as it is, any mistakes or errors, the yellow paper, all that kind of stuff. These are scanned books that Marvel put together in 2007 and put them all onto a DVD so that you could view them on your computer. And that's what we're looking at. So it's fun to see exactly how it looked at the time as opposed to a recreation or a modern computer recoloring. So our art team, let's talk about that real quick. We've got Stan Lee still writing the story. We have Steve Ditko still as the penciler. And now, for the first time, we have a different inker, and that is Vince Colletta. So Vince, or Vinny Colletta, primarily known as a collaborator with Jack Kirby. So real quick, Vince Colletta goes way back in the comic field, back into the 50s, where he was doing, this similar stuff that most people started with. Your jungle comics, romance comics, Western comics, war comics. That was kind of, at that time, was much, much more popular, right? Before the early 60s and the introduction of what we think of as the Marvel Universe, those were the more popular genres. Superheroes were not overly big outside of Batman and Superman. So that's what they started out on. And then Vince eventually ended up coming to Atlas, which of course became Marvel, and was known for a lot of stuff. Daredevil, he had a run on the Fantastic Four with Jack Kirby, but where he's most known is for his Thor work with Jack Kirby. They had an extremely long run together on that book, and then he even continued with the other artists that followed after. I will say this. When I first saw the name, immediately I said, I know Vinny is controversial. And if you talk to other artists, unfortunately, there's not as many around anymore that used to work with him, but there's a lot of documented feedback, let's put it that way. One of the things that Vinny was known for was speed. He was a fast inker, which is important when you're working with Jack Kirby, and that guy's putting out multiple pages a day on multiple books. You need to keep up. And so Vinny was known as being fast, and there's value to being fast. However, the controversy comes when he would change what pencilers did, especially on things like backgrounds or details. He would just remove them. Figures from the background, he would just blank them out, use silhouettes. He would erase parts of the pages, stuff like that. There were many artists, including Steve Ditko, who were quite verbal about their dislike of Vinny's work, and to the point where the story that I read was that Steve would make a point in the office when he saw a new book that was, he'd look at the credits, and if it was inked by Vinny Colletta, he would deliberately either put the book back or throw it in the trash and make sure Stan saw, so that he knew Steve's feelings about Vinny Colletta. So I find it interesting that he would be on this book. Again, maybe it's a time crunch. Maybe it's a fill-in job. I could say he is not the inker on the next issue. So he may come back. I didn't look that far ahead yet, but it's possible he's a one and done. And again, just a deadline requirement, right? But we'll talk about it and how it really does impact the book. We have the splash page here, opening splash page. Great splash page. Goes right into the story of where we're at. So Dr. Banner has been captured by, they're saying, they use the term commies or communists a lot. They don't necessarily say Russians, but you can see the hammer and sickle on the guy's uniform right there. So obviously he's supposed to be captured in Russia, and they want him to develop weapons for them. But of course he keeps turning into the Hulk to break out. And now the guy who runs this military operation is going to try to take him out with some advanced weaponry. So we jump right into the story. There's a scientist here that helps Hulk out, has given him food and been his friend, and that's the other guy that's with the Hulk. So it's a good jump into the story. I like the framing device of the threat and the gun in the foreground. It's very, very nice. The shadow, the drama of that shadow on the wall is good. I personally get what he's doing. So it's a lot of, well, it's one of two things. It's either a lot of hash marks. It kind of looks to me like that, like it was done in black ink with little hatch marks, making it nice and thick, but leaving space essentially for texture, right, to give some texture to this rock face or concrete or whatever it is through the shadow. For me, I would have just assumed blacked it out and just it in a solid shadow. I think that would have been a little more menacing than this idea, this grainy shadow. But that's just my personal opinion. Um, you know, there's no wrong answer there in this particular piece, but for me, a solid shadow would have been more menacing. But overall, good. Oh, and then my Hulk, I'd like my Hulk to be a little bit bigger. I know at this point the character is not way beyond human scale. He's a very large human at this point. But I'd like to see him be maybe, another head taller, I think would be nice. To make him again more monstrous and really emphasize the power. We cut to the next page. This first panel is very nice. The guy's hiding behind the wall there. He steps out, shoots the gun. It's pointed towards, the view of the reader. So that's nice foreshortening. Really good perspective work there. I'm happy with this drama. And then the scientist sacrifices himself for the Hulk. Because I guess this ray was so dangerous it would have destroyed the Hulk. So now the guy's taking his shot and missed. Now he's got to flee. And the Hulk recognizes that this guy was his friend. So one of the things that we're seeing here in terms of characterization of the Hulk, we're seeing a Hulk where he's becoming more of the Hulk we know. Third person, this is the first time, I think so far, that he's referred to himself as third person. Hulk does this. They killed Hulk's friend. Now Hulk will, that kind of thing. So he's getting dumber. He's having a harder time, remembering. Like this guy dies, and it takes him a while to remember. Oh yeah, that guy was nice to me, and he fixed my shoulder and fed me. So we're seeing some of that. So we're starting to get more into that savage Hulk characterization that we know. Breaking through the wall is not bad here, where he smashes through. I like the pose. I like the thickness of the body. That's pretty good. The rubble's not too bad. You get the little figure running away. That's great. This face is not good. And there's two examples in this book that I kind of noted. I've talked about this a bunch. There are different angles that you can show things. There are things called, and it's the same terminology in comics as you use in film and video. Long shot, medium shot, or so long shot, far shot, medium shot, close up shot, down shot, worm's eye view. All these kinds of things are similar because it's referring to where a camera would be placed. So if you imagine this is not a comic, this is a scene in a movie. You have a set, and the actor playing the Hulk is standing there. You choose where you put that camera to emphasize whatever's happening in the scene. So in this case, he's mad, he's looking up, and he's yelling, and he's going after this guy. So this is where that powerful upshot could really help, right? You're tipping your head, the character's head back, and looking at that character. So on some parts of it, they did right. And what I mean by that is the nose should be much closer. As you tip back, it all comes down to, again, foreshortening and perspective. Even though it's not that large, as you tip your head back, your features are further away from the viewer, like your eyes and nose. Your chin is closer, so it's going to be larger. So there's this whole thing that you have to do where you're bending the head back and the features visually shift on the face. What they've done here is they've just drawn the regular face. It's a head that's looking straight at you. That's the shape of the face. But then they tried to use the tricks of squishing the eyes and nose together, lowering the ears, showing the underside of the top teeth and lip to make it look like the head's tipped back, but the shape of the head doesn't work, right? So they've just squished up the features, tried to move the features on the face, but didn't change the angle of the face. So that's why it doesn't work. It's for sure one of the hardest views of the human face that you can draw. Lots of artists avoid it whenever possible because it's just incredibly awkward. You can't really... Nowadays, you could take your own picture. You got your camera. You could go like this and reference and stuff would be very easy. Back then, a lot of artists used mirrors, and they would try to do an expression. They would look at themselves. Well, you can't look at yourself when you're going like this. So how would you know how to do that? So you've got to use then reference, and it's tough for sure. Here's where the wheels come off. So the first 2 pages here aren't bad at all. The inking's not terrible. There's some good shadows. There's some good heavy line weight in places. Again, this area up here, the gun and the details there are pretty nice. I don't have any problems with it. And here again, just everything goes off the rails. The line weight totally changes. Everything is super, super thin. Now, some folks, again, in my research of looking up Vinnie Colletta, some people felt like his thin, wispy, hair-like line weight, that was the phrase that was used, really added to the elements when you're looking at a book like Thor. Here, I think it fails horribly. There's no depth. Things are not three-dimensional. There's not even an attempt. This, where the Hulk is hitting this building, like, what is happening? It's a flat wall. There's no directionality to it. Then there's this door that's like 100 feet tall. I mean, if the Hulk is, let's say 6 feet tall, that's like a 12 to 14 foot tall door. I don't understand. He hits something, little bricks come off. This picture here, he's breaking through a wall, and then I guess this is another wall, and he's hiding behind that other wall, but the angle is all really messed up. So it's very unclear of what's happening. The overlapping of this rubble doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This image, I mean, so that was, again, one of the things that they mentioned some people thought was a strength of Vinnie Colletta was he didn't use a lot of really dark shadows. He would just use this very thin line weight until he got to, the heavier part, but like some hatching and stuff. But to my mind, it just makes it all look very empty. The Hulk is big and massive, and he's smashing through all this heavy concrete and brick and stuff like that. There should be some heavy shadows here. I would have shadowed underneath sort of the rib cage into that abdomen, underneath the arm into the armpit and pec would have been really heavily shadowed. Probably some of the background. You can see there's almost like his nose casts no shadow whatsoever. So that's one of the things it's like the simplest trick. When you're drawing a human face, the nose comes out at you, obviously, but you can't draw something in 3D coming out of the page. So what do you do to show that it has dimensionality? You put a shadow under the nose or to the side of the nose, but it's always going to hit, light is always going to hit your nose and make some sort of a shadow. So when there's nothing there, that line is just a line and it just flattens. The whole face is very, very flat. I do like the darker green tongue. That's a good touch. Very subtle coloring to get that in there, but not bad. And then like this one, again, they're trying to kind of do an upshot. And this one's a little better because it's done in a close-up. But this eye is like sliding off his face. I get the idea that you're trying to do some expressions and he's looking down. But realistically, that instead of being an angle like that, it should be round, right? Your eyeball is round and your eyelids, top and bottom, curve around the outside of your eye. And so it shouldn't be, this end of his eye shouldn't be sliding off unless he's got like Bell's palsy. It should be round. Now it can go, you can do the angle, but this eye is higher than this eye. So really it should be more up in like over here. And then you do the eye like that, up higher. So his eye is melting. Nice try, but just not hitting it. So Hulk is raging, and his rage, we're still at this point where his rage is what triggers him to become the Hulk, but also triggers him to become Banner again. And we see that. So he's smashing through, and all of a sudden he's slowing down because he's transforming, and then he transforms back to Banner and passes out because he can't lift this stone. I like what they were trying with this. Here's my problem. It's too subtle. So this Banner, you can see when we really zoom in, and we're really zoomed in here, there's just the little subtlest amount of green. And that's not an error. That's supposed to be, right, the vestiges of the Hulk as he's transforming, and then he passes out. I would have liked to have seen this figure be a little more green and maybe a little bit larger to show the in-between phase between the Hulk, this moment here, because he's still lifting a giant piece of rubble, and then the banner that collapses. So that's my take on that one. We cut back. The Russian military is coming because this guy reported that the Hulk is attacking, so big tanks are showing up. Now, and again, this is a bad scene change. You have to remember, we only have about 13 pages of story because it's half a book, so we don't have time to kind of mess around. But the reason this is a bad transition is you have the Russian military here, and then you cut over to the American military, and they're talking about what happened. Yes, you do have this narration that says this is happening on the other side of the Atlantic, and through context, again, eventually you're going to go, oh, wait, no, that's right. That's General Ross. That's Glenn Talbot. Okay, I get what's going on. But to cut from the Russian military to another military, again, remember, kids are reading this. Like, look at the ad over here. They're talking about bike decals and model rockets and stuff like that. So, teaching kids how to be a magician. So is a kid going to realize the difference right away? Maybe not. So to me, not a great transition point. Again, this is okay, but it's very unditko-y. This face of Talbot doesn't look like what we've seen as Glenn Talbot. General Ross doesn't look like General Ross. It's not until we turn the page and now they start to look a little more on model. This is the first. Here's Betty when she hears the news that they believe Bruce has defected, even though he was, of course, kidnapped or captured. This is expression on her face is the most Ditko-y face in the entire book so far. And one of the only times where his line work and style really shows through. This is, it's rough. This ink line, now, yes, I want to use a thicker ink line to separate my foreground from my middle ground and background. That's great. But you also have to take into consideration the light source. So again, the light appears to be kind of from the top down. There's a shadow underneath his jaw. There's a shadow under Betty's arm. So don't darken the top of the nose so heavy with this line. That's not where the thickest line should be. Under the chin is good. Under the lip is good. Bottom of the nose is fine. Then this needs to thin out and be more like what's up here on the top of the hair. Also, this is an incredibly bad tangent. We've talked about tangents. It's a place where two lines line up perfectly. And that's what we have here. The hair lines up exactly with the inside of the door frame and flattens the whole thing out. Because essentially your eye tricks into thinking they're on the same plane, as opposed to one being above or one being in front, one being below or behind. And then the last part here, these smoke puffs are very, very bad. I get it. He's puffing on a cigar, but that's not how that works. And it doesn't add anything to the story. We see the cigar in his mouth. You don't need the little smoke puffs. Not great. So Talbot is shooting a shot with Betty, being like, well, the guy you loved, who you were hoping would propose to you, he is a traitor. But you'll get over him. Don't worry about it. You'll get over him, and we'll find love together. And you're like, what a jerk. Now we cut over to the leader, trying to find out what's happening. His spy, the Chameleon, who's still on the base, kind of tells him about the deal where the Hulk is in Russia, and of course the leader has dealings with Russia. So he contacts them, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to... you got Banner? Great, because where he is, the Hulk is, and I want the Hulk. So that's the whole deal. The leader wants the Hulk. Again, I mentioned in my notes, they really haven't figured out the leader's face yet. So this is a note to, again, I say this all the time, new or younger artist. Young does not necessarily mean an age. So that's why I say new artists who want to be comic book artists, who want to learn this craft. One of the things you need to do when you design a character like the leader, you need to draw that character about 8,000 times. Draw him looking down, draw him looking up, draw him in 3/4 one way, 3/4 the other way, draw from straight down over the top of his head, draw him from behind, draw every angle you can, so that way you know how to manipulate and move this character in 3D space. If you design a character that's got a weird shaped head, face, or other feature, and you can't figure out how to draw them in 3D space, that should tell you you may want to simplify your design. And here we've just reached this problem where they want to keep using upshots, but we're not really drawing the head differently, especially the leader who has got this big giant cranium. It needs to tip back, and we're just not seeing that. So yeah, we need to get some consistency there, which does happen over time. So the Russians are frustrated. The fact that the leader's kind of giving him orders. He's going to wait and see what happens, and then try to swoop in and capture the Hulk. The Russians have arrived. The jets have arrived first and attack. Again, the artwork here, like, what are we looking at? I have no problem with the jets swooping in and Banner crouched down. That part's not actually that bad. This part here where he's fleeing and there's just this sort of like little line and dots. Are they shooting bullets? Are they shooting missiles? I mean, we're used to seeing lots of energy lines and motion lines and all this kind of stuff. And now we just sort of get a few little slashes and a sound effect. It's very thin. It's very dashed out. The detail is missing that really gives us a sense of dread, right? The whole point is Bruce Banner, this poor shirtless, torn up pants guy, is caught behind enemy lines and jets are strafing him, and you don't feel any danger here. He kind of runs. He gets to safety. He sees that guy who sacrificed himself for the Hulk. And again, now we see that the two entities are becoming even more separated. It takes him a minute or two to remember he saw the guy first, and then, oh yeah, that he saved me as the Hulk. Like, so there was a time when the two were very tied in and they could remember stuff. The Hulk would know about nuclear, devices and things. Now we're having a hard time remembering, 20, 30 minutes ago. I like this concept of there's an explosion as he's going to start changing, and it blasts him and knocks him into a wall, and before he can strike the wall, he's transformed into the Hulk, which saves him. It's a great trope. Obviously, it's been reused in other media, like other comics, where we've seen, I think it was first done in the Ultimates, where they want Banner and he won't change, and they throw him out of a plane. And so or helicopter. So before he hits the ground, he changes. We've seen that in a couple movies. In the one with Edward Norton, we've seen it with Mark Ruffalo in the Thor Ragnarok. So this idea that the Hulk, his body's, it's like an instinct, or a natural reaction where, like, if you get pushed underwater, you're going to hold your breath. For him, if his body's in danger, he's going to transform into the Hulk. I just would like to have seen either a larger image. Of course, I definitely always want larger panels. That's always my big problem with some of these older Silver Age comics, is how many small itty bitty panels there are with big action in them. It's very hard to see. But again, I know real estate's tough with this because there's only 13 pages. But it would have been nice to see some sort of an in-between transformation phase. We don't really see that here. Just Banner with a weird glow around him, and then the Hulk. The Hulk getting up. And now my problem here, again, this sequence and the concept of him grabbing some rubble, machinery, whatever this is, pieces, parts of stuff around him, leaping into the air, throwing them at the planes and destroying the planes, no problem. I think that's great. This first image here and individually, these aren't bad. The ones from behind, he's got they've really emphasized the build from behind, so he's much bigger. His arms are big and long. The legs are real thick tree trunks with a slightly narrower waist. Like, we're getting into a more modern Hulk build when you see him here in these images from behind. It's great. My problem is you shouldn't show 3 images of the Hulk in very similar sizes in a row. At one point, you've got to turn this camera. So if you want to show him crawling up after he hits the wall and he rises up as the Hulk, that's great. Then you have the planes strafing him, right? Oh, we found him. This panel's fine. This panel, I switched to the Hulk view. I'm going to show his face. I'm going to show the rage. Same dialogue. Maybe even, a hand where he's gripping these things is fine. Then this one, you could cut back to him leaping and showing it from behind because you've switched views. There's any number of ways you could show this, do this image as well. You could do an upshot from the ground showing him leaping up towards the planes. That wouldn't be bad. And then this one is fine. So you just need to vary that camera. You can't show the same angle over and over and over again. Obviously, it looks like you're just hiding stuff, right? It's easier to do sort of a big shape than it is to do the face and the features and all that kind of stuff. So smashes the planes and he starts falling down. He sees the tanks as he's falling down. This landing is super awkward and weird. I don't know why he landed on one hand as opposed to his feet and crouched down. It's a very strange choice. At least I'll say this: they have his hair blowing up as he's falling straight down, so that part's good. And then this Hulk striding towards us is a disaster. The hairy, feathery rendering doesn't really work because it's not blending from a total dark area to a total light area. It's just feathery for the sake of being feathery. Again, the Hulk, you see he has this itty bitty shadow on the ground, but there's still a shadow. It's one of the only indicators of where the light is. So this outline, this contour line on the top should not be nearly as dark. Especially on this other arm over here, you are going to darken under the arms and lighter on the top. Deeper shadows. And then I see this all the time with comic artists. They don't bend the waist. So basically what you have is kind of like what I'm complaining about with these upshots on the face. They've moved his head forward and his shoulders forward. And to do that, his body would come forward, his torso would come forward, but they've drawn the torso as if it's perfectly vertical. So now his head is just sort of cocked forward with his back straight and his arms up, and it's just, it doesn't work physically. It's not the same thing, but real quick, I'm going to cut back just to me, and I want to show you a little bit of what I'm talking about here. In this X-Men piece that I did, if you see the Angel is coming at us. Now, he's not striding towards us, but he's coming at us. So his head is in front of his shoulders and neck. So that part you do. You foreshortening, the head covers the neck, you don't see it. Same with the Hulk. Then you have the torso and the upper body. And that upper body is going to slightly cover some of like the rib cage. You're not going to see as much. And then the abdomen goes back in space. Because you're bent at the waist, and that's not happening here. So this should be more here, this sort of your rib cage area. Then you have just like I'm saying, when your facial features will sort of compress as you go back, they seem to get closer together. Those ab muscles are going to get closer together as you tip his torso towards us and the waist away. And then that's also going to help emphasize, because right now this leg is not striding forward enough, in my opinion. I like that knee a little bigger. Well, if you make the waist smaller, that helps emphasize that and fixes that issue. So overall, it's the pose isn't really working for what you want to do. It's not executed well. The inking and the rendering is not executed well. And I'm perfectly honest, I'm glad that's it. There's the last page of the book. So that all said, I'm going to cut over to the desk and we're going to wrap things up. So that's Tales to Astonish 66 featuring the Incredible Hulk. Rough. Um, I am not a fan of the Vinnie Colletta inks over Steve Ditko. Now, I have other comics that we'll look at down the road in other series where Vinnie Colletta is working over Jack Kirby. And, we'll be able to sort of compare and contrast and see if maybe that is a better pairing than what we saw here. Just knowing what I know in terms of researching Vinny and again the controversy of his inking style, his work style, I see it on the pages of this story, so I understand what's happening. In terms of a rating, I gave this one a 4 out of 10. Nothing really happens. The Hulk, the scientist that helped him dies. He tries to get to the bad guy, can't, transforms into Banner. Then when he's threatened again, transforms back into the Hulk and smashes a couple planes, and that's it. So there's not much happening in the story. There's no real progression of the plot per se. So just kind of, again, knowing where the story's going, I don't want to give spoilers in case anybody's, this is the first time you've seen these, but it does sort of lead to Banner being out in the world a little bit, which I think was probably the idea. So this turn that led from Banner being on a nuclear base to now being in Russia. Now he's going to have to, eventually work his way back to the US, and there's some stories in there. I think it's just a way to get him off of the base. Otherwise, that's the only place we've ever seen. So how do you get the Hulk out into the world doing things? I think this is the story. So that's why I gave it a 4 out of 10. I liked the concept that was going on. Let's see what happens when other people besides General Ross have to deal with the Hulk. I think that's cool. But again, the execution just wasn't there. So that is my take on Tales to Astonish 66. As I always say, your mileage may vary, and I'm always interested in hearing what you think about it down in the comments. So please go ahead and leave those messages. I love to look at them, and I appreciate all the feedback. So thank you. Please consider subscribing. Don't forget about the free art giveaway when we get to 1,000 subscribers, and only you can help make that happen. So thank you all, and I'll see you here next week with even more Incredible Hulk. Thanks.